So, hey everyone, unofficially, happy Friday. Just chilling with Shomari here. We're gonna get this thing going in just a little bit officially, but in the meantime, just happy to see our sunshiny faces. Welcome, Dashy Friday. Oh, also, it's a good time to remember I didn't put up my background lighting, so let me go do that real quick. See, I got these party glow sticks that
Nice.
that work, and I have them configured to
Oh yeah.
a
No,
Dashy
it's all about the
blue.
lighting. I learned it's not about one light. People have that ring light, and I mean it's good
Mm-hmm.
to have lighting, but it's also about having multiple lighting. You need lighting
Mm-hmm.
in front of you, you need lighting behind you, you need lighting above you. When I was really trying to get into like being more in video creating, I definitely took some YouTube inspiration, and I realized it was all about the lighting. It makes such a big difference, the audio and the lighting. So these are two things that I tried to focus on today. Getting the lighting good. So I'm here in a very well lit setting, and unfortunately the audio is not as good as I would want it to be, but we have room for improvement for next time.
Yeah, for sure. It's not that. I mean, you're coming through a lot better than a lot of people have been. This setup that I have is not that difficult to get. Like this is a very good microphone, but it's like $80. Plug it a USB, whatever. It's a cheap webcam you have on here. I do have like a couple of softbox lights, but just any kind of good light over in the corners, hitting at those 45-degree angles, kind of,
Yeah,
and then just a little
exactly.
backlight, and you're good. And
Yeah,
I
yeah,
do
yeah.
need to overhaul my situation.
I
You know.
literally used to travel with tripods for just for the lighting, just so that I can get the angles and the height right. And
Mm-hmm.
it made such a big difference. And I heard, a lot of tips from like YouTubers that, good lighting and good audio. The video can be choppy, but it's important that they can hear you clearly and that, it doesn't look grainy and, the
Mm-hmm.
poor quality. But because a lot of times, the data connection may not be ideal and things may buffer and, be a little choppy. But as long as when, people can hear you clearly, um, that none of that matters. So I hope
Yeah.
that the audio is sufficient. I will do my best to speak very clearly, and hopefully that's good enough.
Yeah. It should be more than good enough. And like I have to like this setup. Like I've been doing this for a good amount of time, but not very well. But part of that thing is it's all in Linux. It's all free open source software for everything,
Yeah,
which makes it trickier in the audio visual department. But I kind of
yeah.
figured out. I actually like the closest I've ever come to actually coding anything real has been this. There's a multi-stream OBS plugin, so I could stream
OBS. Yeah, yeah, I'm familiar.
Odyssey, but they only had like a Windows version, and so I had to
Uh,
somehow hack it together to work on Linux, even though I cannot
uh,
code. I don't know what I'm doing. I literally just started adding new folders and dropping different files and folders and seeing if it worked, and then it worked. And then I
Listen, trial and
switched
error.
computers, and I had to just do that, figure it out from scratch again. So
Again,
that's what
yeah.
this is on.
No, trial and error it's a little time consuming, but it is definitely a very effective way of getting things done. And now with
Mm-hmm.
AI, it's even
Oh yeah.
more at least getting the right best practices and things like that from people that have done it before you. AI has been wonderful in terms of like problem
Mm-hmm.
solving, tricky things like that. Just because it's so knowledgeable about everybody's business, it can find the solution
Yeah.
for you.
Absolutely. Well, actually, it's funny. Speaking of OBS, I realized that I hit the wrong profile on here. So now we have just my generic branding for my generic podcast and not the Dash podcast branding. So small cosmetic
Uh,
issue. So the generic the generic channel intro will be played when I hit this right now. So let me just hit the generic channel intro, confuse some people, whatever. I'll do better next time. It's fine. All right,
no
ready? Three,
worries,
two,
of course.
one, intro. All right, so everyone, officially welcome and happy Friday. Welcome to not the Digital Cash Rundown, but the Dash Podcast, episode 221, which means I started doing the Dash Podcast under a project called Dash Force, I think back in 2017. And we were doing a weekly Dash Podcast for a while. That kind of ended in the end of 2019, and early 2020 I started my own personal channel just to have a home for continuing the Dash podcast. And then it ended up being like a general purpose crypto channel and other stuff. And yeah, so now I've done, this is number 221 of these that I've done, so quite a lot over the years.
Wow.
I'm joined by the
Wow.
one and only that I know of, at least, Shomari. How's it going, man?
I am doing wonderful on this Friday. I trying to not really let the snow get to me because it was my really intention to get out of the north before the snow hit. But I do have one last family gathering tomorrow that I didn't want to miss, and it should be sunny tomorrow. So today kind of sucks, but I'm here. It's Friday. I'm healthy. I'm with Joel. Finally, I got an invitation to his show, so that definitely it's got my spirits at a peak right now for the privilege. And I'm just happy to share with the community because I'm fairly new to the Dash from like a contributor side of it. I've been using Dash forever. I say since maybe 2017, 18. Once I really went like full, living off of crypto, it was just about the practicality of it. So I've been using Dash forever, but in terms of contributing to the community, I just joined the Discord for the first time maybe 3-4 months ago. So I'm kind of a newbie, but I'm learning very quickly and I'm very ambitious. So I love what I've been able to produce so far. I love the support that I've gotten for what I've been working on. So I'm just encouraged right now to keep going, keep building. And right now, I just want to kind of share what that's been like over the last few months and what I have planned for the next few months.
Yeah, absolutely. And from my perspective, at least, I've known of your existence for a while. I've seen plenty of posts on X and stuff, especially from the Dash Direct days of like using Dash in real life, and those were always very fun.
Oh yeah.
And I just noticed, for lack of a better term, you came in like a wrecking ball into the Dash community, starting to develop all this cool stuff. And I've definitely been like the move fast, break things, fix it, come back again, build more. And it's something that I would say, and we'll go into this a little bit more, I'm sure, but the Evolution platform was promised many, many years ago. I can't remember how long ago, probably end of 2018, early 2019 at one point was like an early estimate. And then just it kept on getting extended. And eventually the people, the sort of leadership responsible for these promises got like literally voted off the island in 2022. Just like get out of here kind of thing.
It's gotta happen sometimes. Yeah.
Yes. And so Sam Westrich, or Quantum Explorer, sort of took over and also took ownership of kind of the situation, just saying like, look, I'm going to code this myself, even if no one else does, 80 hours a week. I don't care. I'm going to get this done with zero funding if I have to. And that kind of confidence inspired me to sort of go all in as well in the business and marketing side in 2024, I should say. And yeah, so because of how late it was, it finally got delivered last year, of course, but it was the accelerated release where it's like, it's out, it's working, it's producing blocks, the thing's great, but the developer tools, the SDKs, the documentation, all that stuff just wasn't there and has now been being released after it. So it was like it was a real mainnet successful launch, but it wasn't like you didn't have a bunch of developers ready to start building on it. And you're kind of what I would consider the key trailblazer, where you're kind of at this point where my understanding, again, you're going to educate us all on this, but my understanding is it's like 80 to 90% ready for other developers. So it's like kind of ready, but you're still dealing with a couple of things like the DAPI slowness or whatever else we're going to later.
Yeah, no, I would put it at
But yeah.
90+%
Mm-hmm.
complete in terms of the tooling that would allow you to do something useful. So, and
Mm-hmm.
that's the key, I would say, from what I've experienced is the usefulness of it, because it's great to have technology and to develop cool things, but is it going to be, any sort of demand by users for, providing value in their regular lives, or, in any sense, providing value in any way? And in crypto, I think that's kind of an issue across the ecosystem, is that there's so much focus on developing new ways of doing things, making it faster, adding more privacy, um, optimizing for efficiency, making things smaller. But there's a very, I think, lack of attention towards utility to the end user. And that was the first thing that I started working on, is to find out, like, what would be the value of the evolution platform. And
Mm-hmm.
I started just exploring, and the more I dug into it, the more I realized that there was a focus on utility and not just cool technology, because the, the,
Mm-hmm.
the basis of evolution is not, like, it's not EVM, it's not a copy of Ethereum. I would say the most useful technology that we've seen in the crypto blockchain space, and utilizing it, as best as possible. So basically, taking the best of what we've already been exposed to, and then just kind of perfecting it. And that's
Mm-hmm.
what I recognize with the Evolution platform, with the data contracts. And that's really, I think, the key technology that is being introduced with evolution, is the idea of data contracts. So they're not smart contracts. The focus is on just how can we work with data better and
Yeah.
easier, with less friction, less complication, because I think that's really what will eventually encourage more mainstream adoption, is when people can, at least in my opinion, where people can actually get, like, their hands dirty in, like, actually making something useful for themselves. Even. I think about, like, doing things for your community, or for, like, your school, your high school, your university, and simple projects with let's say, like, the Ethereum virtual machine, or there's a learning curve before you can actually do anything meaningful, useful.
Mm.
And when I first started looking at data contracts, I saw the limits in terms of what it could do, but I immediately recognized that it was simplification to the point where, like, a 5-year old can build a data
Yeah.
contract, a useful data contract. And to me, that is immensely valuable, and I was just excited to be, a part of something that was unique. So I was ambitious to just really understand everything about it, and specifically know what it couldn't do, so that I would understand maybe what direction I would want to go
Mm-hmm.
in, maybe who I'd want to get involved in it, what resources I would need to accomplish, any goals or anything like that. And that's what I've been doing, is essentially a lot of trial and error, discovering what data contracts can and can't do, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say 80% of what I see as useful in terms of blockchain applications, data contracts are perfect for, because they essentially just organize information in a way
Mm-hmm.
that it doesn't have to be overcomplicated, to be useful. And data contracts, as I said, are so approachable that I would say, anybody, whether you believe you're a developer or a builder, or what your skill level is, could, within, a reasonable amount of time, a weekend, let's say, be able to do something useful and confidently build a data contract that had some value for themselves, or for, people around them. And I think that that's going to be what really makes the evolution platform successful, is getting the common people, their everyday people, to actually get their hands involved in it, and that's essentially what I see as the direction that I'm going in, is to make it so that um, it's exciting to everyone, not just
Hmm.
the small community of developers that are interested in just making something, new technology. Um, so evolution is, I think, a very unique proposition. I'm happy to see it on Dash. I would have been excited to see it on any blockchain, but especially because of, I would say, my utility already with Dash, it just kind of seemed like it was a complement to what I'm already
Hmm.
doing. And I've spoken about this before. My attempts of building on Dash L1 were very unsuccessful, because things
Yeah, do
were
you want to
not
mention a little bit more
made.
about that? Like, I'm not super familiar. All I've heard is when you've been trying to build on the evolution chain and having to
Yes,
interact with the core chain
with the
has been
L1, yeah,
frustrating.
it's
But
been very
I
frustrating.
didn't. Did you try to build on the L1 before that?
Oh yeah, for years now. Yeah, I mean, I say the simplest application I tried to build was like a InstaSwap, where I could
Mm.
um, have a web portal where you could swap between all the chains that essentially have like instant transactions, or like zero conf, if you want to call it that. Something like Bitcoin
Hmm.
Cash, to Dash, and now you have Nexa. These are all essentially like zero confirmation block technologies, and I wanted to build something that would be convenient for people to be able to get their assets, you know, back and forth between the UTXO chains. So Dash was definitely one that I was focused on, but working even with the developers, getting their direction on how to do things, it didn't work the way it was advertised. The things that I was expecting to happen didn't happen when I would send a transaction. Sometimes it would get registered and I would be able to then proceed forward. Sometimes I would get nothing. So it was very inconsistent,
Mm.
I would say, was the issue. It's not that it didn't work at all. It was inconsistent, and that didn't build any confidence. So it
Now,
wasn't
what you're
something
referring
I could
to,
bring to production.
are you just referring to Dash here, or are you referring to also the Bitcoin Cash and the Nexa and all the rest of the stuff?
No, no, no. Everything else worked fine.
Yeah.
Everything else worked fine. It was the Dash. It was the Dash core.
Hmm.
I was running a node essentially, and the node, I'm familiar with running nodes. I run many UTXO nodes: Bitcoin, Bitcoin
Hmm.
Cash. Um, there's a few Doge I've run, Litecoin I've run, just experimenting. So I've run many
Of
nodes,
course.
many UTXO nodes. So it was all very familiar. It just didn't work.
So
So I was frustrated
what
by that.
part didn't work, do you think? Was it like the way the actual core protocol was engineered? Was it something about like the actual tooling involved? Was it like blockchain infra providers like Insight and things like that? Like where do you think the pain mostly was there?
I was running the core node. I was at like the base layer of Dash, so I
Hmm.
wasn't running anything on top as yet. It was really, I was trying to get the notifications. Transaction notifications were important to me. That was essentially what I needed to build the exchange, was to be able to get notified when Dash was sent, so that it could
Mm.
register, I could get a confirmation, and I could swap. So when it was working, it was working fine. I would get the notification instantly, and everything would process as expected, but it wouldn't always notify me. And I went through many, I would say, iterations, at least two times, independent attempts, where I wanted to build something useful, that I tried to take like a deep, patient, take a dive and just sort out the issues. So it wasn't like a quick, afternoon. I mean, I spent days trying to work through the issues. I'm sure I contacted the developers. I can't remember who. This was years ago, probably two,
Hmm.
3 years ago, that I was attempting to do this, and they were support. They were definitely attentive to my needs, my requests. But like, in the end, it just didn't work, and I knew it was supposed to work because again, it was familiar to me working with other nodes, so I knew what was supposed to happen. It just wasn't happening. Specifically, what was it? Um, the message. There's a protocol at the node layer that you can essentially listen to everything that comes through like a fire hose, every
Mm-hmm.
transaction on the network. That's usually how you build indexers. You just you listen to everything and you index it. So what essentially simply what was happening was I was not getting the fire hose. I was getting a partial, and I wanted the whole thing. So I didn't know how to get the whole thing out of Dash, and that was the roadblock that where I failed.
Mm-hmm.
And that was it. That was the only thing. But now moving forward, to like present with the evolution, there's very, very little that you have to do to interact at the L1 level. Essentially, it's really just the registration when you're creating a new identity to get the funds from Dash Core into the Evolution platform. That's
Mm-hmm.
really the only, I think, involvement that L1 plays in evolution is just to get your dash that you know today into the new system. So that was very, I would say, comforting that I,
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't really have any need for the L1, especially at the client level. And that was the most important thing. I didn't want to have to support the L1 at all. If I need to
Mm-hmm.
interact with the L1, I can figure out ways. I can work with parties, maybe pay a premium for my ability to work with the L1, but I did not want to have to deal with supporting
Mm-hmm.
L1 issues moving forward. And that was like first and foremost, what amount of interaction would be required. And once I realized that it was minimal, then I think that's when I kind of went head first into the platform because I realized this was something that was working. Fortunately, when I guess first started like actually working with the code, my first experience was the vibe coding from Sam's Yapper project that you recommended.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the first code, like working code, that I was able to work with, and it all worked. And that's it's not an understatement to say that
Mm-hmm.
because oftentimes you will clone a repository to work with something, experiment with something, and it doesn't work. There's failures, there's inconsistencies, there's bugs, there's error messages, things like that. And it was so surprising to see something that was vibe coded completely work. Essentially, I could look back and say that the whole thing worked. So it
Mm-hmm.
was a great foundation to say, okay, this is what platform looks like when it works, and um, and I liked what I saw. It was simple, I guess, given relatively simple, given how complex crypto can be, dealing with a lot of the new stuff, especially with like the ZK, zero knowledge and the privacy stuff. It gets very, very complicated. So I was pleasantly surprised by how simple the platform was to work with, approachable, as I said, I think by anybody, to some level, and I was confident, that I could build something useful. So I did. I think for a month, literally every day, I was working on platform, just just exploring mostly, but also trial and erroring different things. See if I could break it, what would break, and I never broke it. So it held up, from day one, and that confidence has just been growing. I could talk a lot about the support level as well, beyond what
Mm-hmm.
what I was given. I tried to kind of extend that, and when I did and reached out for help, getting assistance, it was again another pleasant surprise about how engaging the support community is for Dash right now. So from a builder's perspective, I say come one, come all, because even though maybe the tooling isn't complete, you can get started right now and build something useful. And wherever you maybe might reach, some sort of friction or a roadblock, you almost certainly are going to get a high level of support from very, very capable people in the community to resolve whatever issues you're having. And I'm trying to think of like an example of something that I couldn't do that was resolved by the community. But it was essentially just a matter of getting onto the Discord, making a
Mm-hmm.
request, and within hours, sometimes less than that. In a few cases, there was a solution that would resolve my issue, and I could continue moving forward. And again, as a builder, that's very uncommon. Oftentimes, you reach a roadblock and you stop, and your project can fail, and it just
Mm-hmm.
comes to an end, and your code begins to rot because you can't move any further. I don't see that happening with platform, given what I've been able to work with and what I've seen. I just don't see a situation where you're going to get stuck. Um, it's not anything where I would say, they're inventing anything new. As I said, in the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
from my perspective, it was a compilation of the best ideas of crypto. Let's just take what is most popular, what is most in demand, and let's concentrate it into a single platform. Throw away all the complexities that that create the friction. So that's where you kind of lose some of the like EDM has the it's what is it? It's what's the right term? You basically you can build anything with
Mm-hmm.
EVM, but with that comes a lot of complexity. So you do have a slight limit in terms of what you're able to do, but what you are able to do is so much easier to do, and that's unique. I don't see anywhere else in crypto where they've simplified the the, um, the platform in a way that um, really eliminates the fear that a lot of people have when it comes to like getting onto a new system. So I haven't really had an opportunity yet to onboard any new builders. I've mentioned platforms to a few people that I knew would probably be excited about the idea of data contracts. But in terms of the tooling, I haven't really been able to like confidently start to like as you would say shill the platform yet. We're
Mm.
almost there. I would say weeks away from the point where things are really stable. Um, because there at times I'll see things go down, and that does create friction. But it's far and few between. I think that's really where the focus is right now is on just stabilizing. When I talk to the other contributors, it's really just about getting things stable. And I look at a lot of the work that um, specifically Mikhail and his team are doing, and it's excellent. I mean, what they're
Mm.
doing is going to create a system that I wouldn't say is infallible, but I think that's the direction I see them going in. Is with basically building. It's hard for me to really without getting too technical, but
Yeah,
with
of
Dash,
course.
there are some unique qualities to the to the system that are not found anywhere else. So I think maybe just touch on like some specific things. The API for Dash is incredible. It's decentralized,
Mm-hmm.
and again, that's another unique aspect to evolution. Is having a decentralized API from the start. Um, in contrast, for example, you would say like Bitcoin Cash or any UTXO chain, the APIs are usually not built right into the core. They are provided by third parties, and those third parties are usually, in my opinion, not very reliable.
Mm.
They're not enterprise, based. they're contributors, they're hobbyists. So,
Yeah.
for example, you'll often have APIs going down on the weekend when people go away, and
Hmm.
that's just not that's not enough to attract enterprise builders. The top tier are not going to be. It's not acceptable to have downtime, consistently.
Mm-hmm.
And I see no effort in the ecosystem in general to improve on that. So like it's a huge contrast between like the EVM world, the Ethereum world, and the UTXO world. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know exactly why that is. Maybe it's just the money, the investment. But
Yeah.
like for example, Ethereum, just to take the number one example, when they launched, they came out with a system called Infura, and
Mm-hmm.
Infura had essentially, I think it was running off of like AWS, but it was essentially like unbreakable. So it never went
Mm-hmm.
down. Like I don't know an instance where Infura ever went down, any downtime
Mm-hmm.
whatsoever. So it just worked. So as a builder, you're gonna approach
Yeah.
a new system and see what the experience is, and it was essentially flawless. And that goes confidence. So now you take a contrast to like I'm going to use Bitcoin Cash because that's really what I'm most familiar with. But Bitcoin Cash APIs go down constantly, especially under stress. So when
Now,
you
how
know
recent
you
is your experience with this, by the way? I know that you've been using, building in the community for a long time. Is a lot of this like 2025 experience?
absolutely, yeah, this is current. I
Mm.
mean, this is today. So
Okay.
um, you'll notice that like what happened with CryptoKitties, where you have like
Mm-hmm.
this really one popular application that just overloads
Mm-hmm.
the infrastructure and then everything else fails. Um, and you don't know that until it happens. Everything's working fine until disaster happens, and then nobody really takes ownership of the disaster. It just now it
Mm.
doesn't work anymore. So I find that happens a lot with the UTXO side, where it works until it just completely breaks, and then you realize this is
Mm-hmm.
kind of all bullshit, because nobody knows how to fix it.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do? You just essentially have to stop working, because where are you going with this? At that point that your project is not going to scale. I had this issue, I will say, with Nexa last year, um, September-ish of 2024, where one of my projects became very popular, and I guess the UTXOs or whatever built up, and the infrastructure started to fail. And
Mm.
the attention was disappointing because I wasn't seeing any effort to really resolve the issue. It was more of a, well, nobody else is having this issue, so it's not a priority. And to me, it was,
Interesting.
well, I have the number one project. Everyone's eventually going to run into this problem. I'm just the first to experience it. So that was very disappointing. That's not unique at all. I find that that's just the norm when it comes to infrastructure on the UTXO side, where there's just
Now,
so little, I
why
guess,
do you
funding.
think? Like, let me speculate a little bit as to why that could be, and then I'm sure with your far superior experience in that domain, because I haven't done any building. I've used UTXO coins, like all of them, for last, you know, 12, 13 years, right? But I haven't like built things on them.
Exactly,
But so
exactly, and
do
that's and
you,
that's the point.
so, what do you think? Is it that Ethereum was sort of built, using the Ethereum example, was sort of built for like enterprise scale building from just the get go? Like they've had a very
From the get
clear
go,
idea of what they were doing.
from the jump,
And
from the jump. Yep.
whereas the kind of impetus with the UTXO coins was more, well, Satoshi disabled the opcodes back in the day, but like now we can re-enable them, we can do all the things, but from a purist UTXO perspective. And so therefore it's almost like being able to technically do it checks the box, and it's not necessarily as important yet, or maybe, maybe it will be, maybe it won't be, to just get super reliable scale on these platforms. Do you think that's kind of semi-accurate, or is there something I'm
It
missing
is.
there?
It is because in the end, it all kind of works. it just doesn't scale. If I could really
Mm-hmm.
sum it up succinctly in that way, because it all works. It's just what I would say is the user experience is horrible. So you're
Mm-hmm.
not going to get, I would say, consistent growth from the mainstream because
Yeah.
eventually they're going to hit those pain points. I can give you an example with on the Bitcoin Cash side. Read.cash is probably one of the most
Mm-hmm.
impressive applications that I've used
Yeah, I've used it
on
before.
you know, and it's the developer is top notch. Infrastructure was there was attention put on the infrastructure, but again, using it, I at the time I was a power user of the platform, and I frequently would see the platform go down because of the infrastructure,
Mm-hmm.
specifically because of the infrastructure. And there was really no fix for that other than just reduce the load on the platform.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm saying, well, will the platform ever become like a big, a big deal if you can never cross this certain threshold of users? It just always has to kind of stay like niche, and that doesn't appeal to me at all. I want millions of users on my platform eventually. If I can attract a
Yeah,
million
of
users, I
course.
want a million users on my platform. So
Because like
it
making
just
money
feels
off of it, you can't really make money off it without a lot of users usually. And the only other way I found this is like this happens in crypto a lot, and maybe it's worse in this kind of pocket of crypto, but it happens in crypto a lot where you have products that are designed for the people that fund them and not for actual users, where it's
yeah,
just like,
yeah,
oh, I
exactly.
built this cool thing, and it satisfies the requirements to get the funding for it or get someone to like fund it, but then actual usage doesn't hit because it's not designed for those people.
Exactly. And I don't see that changing, and it's very
Mm-hmm.
disappointing. In general, I just recently this past weekend, Bitcoin Cash had a hackathon, and they it's the first one in many years. So I was very happy that they made that initiative just to kind of see where the ecosystem was, the builders ecosystem
Mm-hmm.
was in terms of like what people were interested in creating. And I wasn't disappointed. I was happy to see the amount of participation, but in the end, again, looking at where like you look at the results, where the winners were selected, they're like the people that won. It was more about technology than usability, and that wasn't always the case because if you go back to the last hackathon, 2001,
Mm-hmm.
the project that
21
won
probably, right?
2021,
Okay.
21, yeah. The project that won that hackathon, it was purely peer is the name of the project, and it was 100% consumer based, project, and it's a wonderful project. You can use it. I encourage people to use it. It's a great idea. It was well developed and implemented and deployed. It took years to do it, and they did an amazing job. But that was in a different era when there was a focus on like adoption and getting people to actually use the blockchain. Like in today's crypto, like nobody's trying to get people to use it. And I
Mm-hmm.
mean, is that just lost? Like, are we gonna ever go back to like you know utility of crypto, or is it just gonna be an investment that everybody just looks at the number, coin market cap?
Mm.
And that's what I'm looking to break with Dash Evolution is to go back to utility and not just the idea of crypto as an investment. Because
Yeah.
I don't see anybody focused on utility today. It's all about number go up.
Yeah. So how, based on the way evolution's looking now, do you think that that's like a realistic proposition, or do we have like a lot of like growing to do still?
No, I see that as the only real accessible platform today that can appeal to the mainstream.
Mm.
Um, I don't see anything else. I mean, if you look at like the top crypto communities. Like even Solana, super popular, but they're using their entire execution platforms based on Rust, which is like C. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
at least Solidity is based on JavaScript. So again,
Mm-hmm.
it's much more approachable. Who's going to learn Rust to write a freaking contract? Like engineers.
Yeah.
That's it. Not regular people. So with platform, technically speaking, it's based on the JSON schema, which when I found that out, again, it was just reinforcing my
Yeah.
belief that this was the solution to getting like people hands on, because it's such a mature protocol. First of all, I was happy to see that like Dash didn't invent something new. He took
Mm-hmm.
something that was already great and applied it, in a very smart way. So with JSON, there's so much documentation and support already for that, that that's not up to Dash.
Mm-hmm.
You can get that elsewhere. So I'm hoping, that again, the community can like curate all the best tools to make that, as easy as
Yeah.
possible for people. But the community does not have to reinvent any of those tools. The tooling for JSON is very mature. It's all out there. It just has to
Mm.
be organized and presented, properly. So again, that's not available anywhere else. I see
Mm-hmm.
the trend going more towards what Solana is doing, like what Polkadot is doing. Because I tried to work on Polkadot. That was one of the chains that I was very ambitious with, after
Mm-hmm.
the gentleman left Ethereum. I forget his name. And I was interested in what he was going to do, and I'm still interested in what he's doing. But it just seemed to me that it would never go big because of how
Mm.
complex it was. And they were the first to really, I think, go Rust based with their contracts. And I know they're building compatibility layers and such, but the foundation
Mm-hmm.
was based on Rust, and it was just so, I would say, such a high bar to even just get started. Again, just for engineers only. So with platform, with the data contracts, the bar is as low. I mean, nobody has a bar this low. So we don't even know yet how attractive it's going to be to just the everyday person.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking forward to like early next year doing some mini hackathons, just to
Yeah.
discover what the reality is when it comes to the appeal of these data contracts. I mean that's going to be the real test, and I'm thinking that's going to really be the turning point, when people
Mm-hmm.
realize that they can build, uh, on platform something useful.
Yeah.
So that's the direction I'm heading in, is just to really discover everything that's possible with data contracts, present that, and then kind of solicit people to experiment with that, have success. That's obviously a key
Mm-hmm.
to driving more growth and more adoption is success. Where again, using some examples from like the Bitcoin Cash community, the success rate is already not very high, and then the longevity of those projects is even worse,
Yeah.
in terms of like how long is it going to be actively used. I've been monitoring some of the top projects. Um, um, I forget which one it was. But like some of the more, I would say, attention grabbing projects, that did have sufficient funding still are basically zero volume.
Mm-hmm.
Like nobody's using it.
Yeah.
I can't think of the names now. I'm sorry, but
Yeah. And
I
let
look
me
on
just
chain. My
yeah, let me also just like say in all this like explanation, when your Bitcoin Cash is something like 20 times Dash's market cap right now, and Solana is like over 100,
oh yes, I
and
mean yeah.
like there's a massive amount of capitalization relatively speaking, and like listen, I'm a I'm not super experienced in Solana, so I won't say much about that. But as far as like I've been using Bitcoin Cash since the fork, kind of, and I'm friends with a lot of people in that community, and they're good line people, all that. And at the risk of risk of sounding like too negative, I do. It does still feel like kind of like very hobbyist as far as like it's like feels almost like Satoshi Dice era kind of thing where it's just like, oh, cool, let's see what we can build, and it kind of works, and it's good. The ecosystem, they're doing some pretty interesting things, and I'm watching, of course, and they're,
Super
but
interesting. Yeah, the technology is amazing.
it doesn't feel like adult to me as far as like it feels like hackers in their basement, like
It's academic
you
to
know.
me. That's how
Mm-hmm.
I classify it. It's inspirational. I can go both ways with it because what I see being built consistently is groundbreaking. Um, it's fantastic, and I encourage it. However, it can't be the only path to growth because
Mm-hmm.
it's all back end.
Yeah.
There's just so little that I would say, you know, materializes on the front end for the user, the end user,
Mm-hmm.
the common end user, and that to me is the failure of not just Bitcoin Cash by any means, of just crypto.
Mm-hmm.
Is it's so amazing on the back end, but rather pathetic on the front end. Because
Yeah.
I mean, I work with, you know, people that are at almost every level of crypto experience and just in different aspects of, involvement in crypto. And, there's no excitement for the back end technology. So
Mm-hmm.
using, a familiar example, in the last upgrade for, for Bitcoin Cash, I'm just going to use it as an example, they added big integers, which was like, I mean, that was like such it's a simple thing, the integers, but it
Mm-hmm.
offers now so much more that you can do in terms of like the
Yeah.
functionality of the blockchain. You can do like privacy, so much. Just that one thing. And they added that last May. I did this past May. And to me, it's like, okay, like I would have been like waiting for it to go mainnet with something already
Mm-hmm.
built, just to utilize this new feature that is going to unlock so much potential. And there's nothing. There's like literally
Mm-hmm.
nothing. At least from the on to the end user, it's all just academic, building these cool
Mm.
things. And I don't discourage that, but I'm saying that can't be the only thing you're doing. You have to build for the end user, and you have to talk to the end user and find out what it is that they're looking to to make their lives better, or add value, or whatever it is, and then cater to that. And I don't see any effort being made to satisfy the end user. It's all about the developers and their investors,
Mm-hmm.
as you pointed out, and once they, I guess, get the funding that they need to build something, they're happy. They'll spend the next 3 to 6 months building, some cool feature that will never see the end user, will never get to the front end. And I'm kind of just done with that. Like I'm just over it. I don't discourage it again, because like even just now, November 15th, they just locked in some really new cool features, amazing things, that I'm very happy are being added, to add more, utility and functionality. But I'm pretty confident at this point that it's never going to reach the front end. No one's going to actually build an application that the user is going to be able to capitalize on these features that have been added year after year. Cash tokens was another one, and I think that was really disappointing. I don't want to get, I don't want to get negative,
Yeah.
but that's when I kind of started distancing myself. That was last May 2024. It got
Mm-hmm.
released, and that's when I guess that's when reality for me set in, that this was maybe never going to happen, and I had to
Mm.
kind of look elsewhere. But as I said, that's not unique to any chain. So I don't want to stressing
Yeah.
negativity on one chain because this is not unique to one chain at all. It's
Yes.
really a UTXO problem because EVM doesn't have this problem, and I don't know
Hmm.
why. It might just be funding. That's like the biggest difference, but I don't know if that's the reason.
Yeah, I would probably agree because, and like, this is my historical perspective on all this stuff, right? Uh, UTXO, I mean, Bitcoin had like, I mean, I don't know how much money Satoshi had, but it didn't, it seemed to be very grassroots, but there was such an overwhelming outpouring of support for it that it just got to these high
Oh yeah,
echelons. All
yeah.
the other projects, like another one, which I'm not, I don't, again, I can't speak on from a builder perspective, but like Litecoin. Litecoin has a big market cap, I would say. It's got a lot of actual usage as far as like for payments, like
Oh
close to
yeah.
Bitcoin transaction volumes in some cases, and some really smart people working on some cool things. I really like the
Oh
way they
yeah.
did MWeb, for
Oh
example.
yeah.
But then
Oh yeah, for
I
sure.
also know foundation people in the foundation, the community and stuff, and there's not a lot of people, and they have almost no money. Like it's very like small potatoes to where even though Dash is far smaller in like market cap and then currently in usage, the amount of like organizational effort, the professionalism, all this is like a lot bigger than Litecoin, I would say.
Oh yeah.
Even though like so
Very impressive.
it's this weird discrepancy where the UTXO, the old school UTXO projects are still in kind of like hacking in the basement sort of levels,
Yeah.
whereas then you have the titans of industry of money where, you know, Solana has all the money. Ethereum has all the money that
Look at
Solana
Avalanche.
doesn't have.
Oh my
Oh
God,
yeah,
Avalanche
dude.
just they just coming out of their ears. They sent me
Yeah.
money. I have to give Avalanche a shout out because they were very generous recently, and I'm looking for more generosity from them, by the way. But yeah, like some of these guys have injuries and they don't even know what to do with their money. You know,
Yes.
they have to give it away because it's like it's been earmarked to be given away. So they're just looking
Uh
for
huh.
like who can they give it to? And the
Yeah.
tens of
It's
thousands,
it
hundreds
is
of thousands.
crazy.
You know.
You see a lot of fruit from the money, but it's also you see a lot of stuff that is papered over because they have so much money. As far as like,
Yeah.
oh, you can fund super well like developed ecosystems and a lot of development and never really translate it to users because you just
Yeah.
have all this money.
Yeah.
Whereas with like the UTXO side, you don't have the money, but you also therefore don't have to generate it because there's no pressure. I kind of feel like the Dash side has like a little bit of money. It's not a lot, but has some, and therefore that little bit it might be. Maybe I'm patting myself on the back here by just it seems like it might be the sweet spot to get effective stuff done because you have enough to have professionals working on it, but not enough to have like out your ears where you have no fire under your ass kind of thing.
Sure, sure, sure. And I recognize that as well. The organization of Dash, from like day one, I'm very impressed with the DAO. Super impressed
Hmm.
with just the way it works. And I mean, people complain and it can be different, but relatively speaking, it's very, very impressive what you guys are doing. I think like Zcash also has something similar. Like I was a fan of having the protocol fund development. I think it's how you are most, I think, motivated, just in terms of like aligning incentives and things like that. But I realize maybe that's not the way everybody wants to do it. But I respect the ones that have done it successfully. And I think Zcash is probably the other example
Hmm.
that have done a great job with funding from the protocol itself. But it's about consistency, and I don't think that's the reason because like Bitcoin Cash can raise $1 million. $100,000
Hmm.
is not it's not difficult, um, and I see it happen. It's just what is it being applied to? And
Hmm.
I don't want to get I'm not going to get negative. I'm not going to do that. But
Yeah.
my beef is with the maxis. Once the maxis really took over, the focus changed. And
Hmm.
so the monies I feel are not being applied sustainably. It's just very like short-sighted perspectives with the maxis because they're
Yeah.
just looking at the charts, the price
Of
charts.
course.
They're not looking at like 5 year roadmap again to for adoption like they were before. Because when I got excited about Bitcoin Cash was in 2020. That's when I started, right when the pandemic started, like literally. Pandemic started February 2020.
Mm-hmm.
They locked us in, and that was when I started with Bitcoin Cash. And at that time, it was very exciting because I was like, "Oh, this is Bitcoin, but with people that know what the hell they're doing, in terms of like utility,
Mm-hmm.
creating utility." So I was for like 2 years. I was very very excited about where I was and what I was doing, and I did a lot. I did wrote a lot of code for 2 years,
Mm-hmm.
and then the maxis really took over, and it all just came crashing down. And I don't see any life like I did then. Presently, like today, because as I said, I just witnessed the hackathon, and again, I'm very supportive of it, but the outcome is very clear that the focus is not on end user utility. Because look at who won, and you can
Mm-hmm.
tell right away. So I don't see much changing um, with that. And with that, again, I decided, I have to look elsewhere. I had kind of the same disappointment with Nexa in terms of not being focused on builders. Um,
Mm.
I will just make a slight comment because, obviously, maybe people know that I worked with Nexa for 2 years, like very in depth. And the issue I had in the end, which really was more like end of end of last year, was that when kind of the shit hit the fan, nobody stepped up, and I kind of took that personally, I guess, because I was promised other things. I was promised a hackathon.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt there was a lot of like reneging from the team in terms of like what they promised from the early days, and the same thing happened with BTC. Whereas it was meant to be like a microtransaction financial system,
Of
and I
course.
built an entire business, a very very successful business on that model.
Yeah, you were
Just
mentioning that
I'll just
before. What
yeah, I'll just
was
make
that
a note
business,
of
if you
it.
don't mind me kind of, unless
Sure,
you want
sure.
it to be private?
No, not at all. It's just painful
Mm-hmm.
because I lost it. But no, it's not private at all. I mean, I long story short, so living in New York at the time, I was hanging out with all the crypto people in New York City, going to all the events there, and I was, I guess, commissioned to build an ATM,
Mm.
like an upgrade to, I forget the name of it now, but it was like $1,000 ATM, Bitcoin ATM they had back in the day, and it kind of sucked. And I had done some software upgrades for it that were, working out very well, and I got commissioned to actually just rebuild it, re-engineer it,
Mm.
and try to keep the price,
Of course.
relatively low. Keep everything, simple, but just, better. And so I did that. And in the end, the machine ended up being about $1,500 for a Bitcoin ATM machine, very portable. So it's very attractive. A lot of people ordered the machine. I ended up moving to, I think that's when I moved to Atlanta, okay. Or maybe I was already living in Atlanta. I'm not sure. But I went to Atlanta, set up an office there. I started
Mm-hmm.
manufacturing ATM machines. So long story short, I made about maybe 40 of these machines in total. I would say maybe about 25 were operational at one time, and they were almost exclusively on the East Coast. So from Boston, Massachusetts, down to, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
Atlanta. I don't think I hit Florida. I'm not sure. Um, and this was like before General Bytes really like took off. So my ATM was like the number one ATM at the time,
Wow.
and it was doing very very well. I mean, very 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 well. I mean, it was just so much money.
Mm-hmm.
There was just so much money. I mean, these people were putting like $10,000 into the machine. We're charging
Wow.
them like 15% minimum. And I mean, it got silly, really, really silly because at times it became like a system would congest and we would have to slow things down. So we would raise the rates. And I remember days where we would raise the rates to 50% and people would not stop. They were still putting in like $100,000. And we're charging 50%.
Yeah.
So the money is just
Yeah,
like,
that's crazy. I
the
mean, do you
money
think
was
they
just
just didn't
insane.
notice or care about the rate, or do you think they just were like, well, despite that, it's still worth it? If you were to
Still
guess.
worth it.
Okay.
It's still worth it to them because I'll give you a story.
Mm-hmm.
The first machine I deployed officially was at my cousin's shop in Brooklyn, New York. This is before Bit License, and it was a storefront. Okay, so it's Thursday. I'm in Atlanta. I ship the machine overnight up to New York. My dad receives it, brings it to my cousin. I kind of walk him through how to set it up. Not like operational, but just kind of set it up. I arrive Friday morning, and there's a fucking line for the machine. The machine's not even hooked up yet. There's a line.
Wow.
And it got crazier than that because people were literally just leaving their money with me. And like, when the machine is working, here's my Bitcoin address. Just, run it through. That is the demand I faced for
Mm-hmm.
the Bitcoin ATM machines back in the day. And that was 2017 or 16. Oh, no, no, no. This is
Mm-hmm.
15. I'm sorry. My timer's
Yeah.
off. This is 2015. So the demand was just irrationally insane. Um, his neighbors, my cousin's neighbors, on the shops next to them, demanded a machine. They demanded it. They were like, "We need a machine too." Everyone wanted a Bitcoin ATM machine. This was before Bit license, so I mean, it was just insanity, and it was just
Yeah.
wild. I mean, completely wild, wild west. So that lasted until I would say the fees went mad, and it
Mm-hmm.
broke my entire business model because at that point I had a lot of machines running. I had machines running 24/7 in like 24-hour shops, and so the volume became really really high, and it wasn't always profitable when
Mm-hmm.
people did small transactions. So as the fees kept going higher and higher, we started actually losing money, because sometimes the transactions would cost like $5 and people were only
Mm-hmm.
changing $20. So we're paying like 25%. And we're like, that can't, that's not sustainable. And it was very volatile. We didn't know day by day. So at that time, I didn't understand the block wars at all. I knew there was a discrepancy with like,
Mm-hmm.
agreeing on something. Um, in my view, it was like, I looked at it as like the VHS data war, where like they were trying to decide like HD, DVD versus Blu-ray, um, where it was like you're trying to do the same thing, but like you don't really decide on you can't agree on the technology, and that's what I thought was happening. Was that there was just two factions and they were fighting for like power or whatever. Like, I didn't care. The reality was that one of those factions wanted the system to be very expensive. No more microtransactions. And I was not aware. I was completely oblivious to that. So I'm just kind of
Mm-hmm.
waiting for the fees to go back down, like because they had crossed the dollar at one point. That's when I kind of took notice, was when the fees started becoming more than a dollar, and I was like, okay, like this is getting kind of ridiculous, but I'll just hold out and it'll be fine. And then when it started getting to like
Never
five
was
dollars,
fine.
$4 or $5, it was never fine again after that. And the idea of microtransactions was just gone. Like some penny transactions, like that was just nobody was talking about that anymore. So for me, Bitcoin had broken, and my business model was based on high volume. I would say low profit margin at that
Mm-hmm.
time.
Of
I
course.
and again, I could have been the type to like gouge, but that's not what I wanted because I wanted mass adoption for Bitcoin, and I had the support to do it. Specifically, Georgia Tech um, was sponsoring me, so I was in their incubator, um, and they were ready to deploy machines everywhere. They brought in NCR to speak with me,
Mm-hmm.
to basically retrofit their ATMs to support crypto. So we were
Mm-hmm.
ready to go big. We were ready to go mainstream, and in a very organized, professional way. But Bitcoin had other plans. So it just broke my heart, I guess,
Yeah.
because today I could have seen the accessibility for Bitcoin as common as any ATM machine. Because I
Mm-hmm.
think that was the direction we were going in. Every ATM was going to get retrofitted to support crypto, basically to be able to accept money. That's what we were trying to do. Um, and it just the whole system broke. So I mean that was my first real disappointment. That was just the first of several.
Yeah.
But
Well, I mean, that happened to me too, obviously, and my story is pretty well documented. Of I was using, um, you know, I was using Bitcoin from the time I got my first one in 2013 up until I only started accepting Bitcoin to be paid in 2015, up until closed my bank account 2016, and then just kind of getting rugged and hanging around a shopping mall for 2 hours waiting for a transaction to go through and having to pivot. And that's kind of what drove me to Dash. And because that was a year before Bitcoin Cash even existed, everyone kind of knows that who watches this show. It's kind of a tale as old as time, so it seems like it hit a lot of people. But yeah,
yeah,
let's focus in on a lot of this like evolution platform stuff because I'm really like, unfortunately, the show is getting too good. As far as like there's like this I get a feeling this is like a 5 to 8 hour show in the making, and so to keep it to like 2 or so
no, 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 no,
hours,
no, no, no,
we
definitely
like,
not.
but that's what
I'm
I'm
gonna have
saying
to.
is
I'm gonna have
like,
to pee. I gotta eat.
yes, so
No, I'm trying to keep it like around like under 3 hours. I should have asked you what you estimated so we could kind of pace. But no,
yes.
no, no, we're not doing that. We're not doing that.
For these, I budget
Um,
typically for like 90 minutes, and then you can kind of drag on to like 2 hours or so. But so
okay,
where we talk about all this stuff, right? You mentioned that platform is really, the evolution platform really works for basic things. Let me kind of, because I do know more than maybe I'm letting on with these really dumb questions, but I want to bring it to like the dumb level of things. As
sure, sure,
far
sure. Let, let,
as
let, let's go to the basics. Yeah.
so what exactly is this thing good for? That so first of all, what is it good for, and then what is it good for that other things aren't good for? So let me sort of preempt the second question a little bit by saying it sounds like we already talked a little bit about that stuff in just saying that the other things that when other things build like this, it's just harder to do. It's just not as turnkey. It's different coding languages. You can't. It's not just vibe codable to the same extent where you just make stuff that's just easy to build and just works. But now, so what is it? It's a thing that does XYZ better. But what does it do? So
Sure,
why would
sure.
anyone need this kind of a thing? I'm maybe not your grandma, but I'm your mom, right? I'm like your parent. I'm your uncle or whoever, someone who's like who understands, like uses the internet, have relatively heavily, like
Sure.
knows how to use that stuff, but doesn't understand like blockchain development. It's like what kinds of things that humanity cares about is this thing good for?
Sure. Well, again, it comes really back. It focuses on the idea of managing data. So the data contract is, I would say, the most important aspect of what evolution offers. Everything is going to pretty much be, um, you know, surrounding some form of data contract. So the data contract is it's just a rule set. It's
Mm-hmm.
basically specifying specifically, what can and can't be done with the data. So which data, you decide. So it could be, accounting information. You could be running, payroll, employee records. Any data essentially. And data contracts allow you to set up rules on managing that data. So it's kind of like saying that, the ID has to be, in this format. Like think of like Ethereum, all the addresses start with 0x. So if you try to put in an address that doesn't start with 0x, the data contract's going to immediately say, no, 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 that's the wrong format. If you try to put in, a payroll entry and you leave a field out that, is required, the data contract's going to immediately tell you, you forgot this field. If you try to put
Mm-hmm.
in, let's say, a string value, like someone's name, where there should be a
Mm-hmm.
currency, the data contract is going to tell you. So you set up these rules with the contract, and then now the data gets very, very well organized and very, very well structured. So basically, any service, business, project, anything you want to do that has to manage data in a very strict way, where um, you know you don't want invalid entries. This evolution platform does that better than anybody else because it's done in a very simple way. It's done using very, very mature tools. Again, it's JSON schema that controls all of this. So that's been around, I don't even know when that was created, but a decade's worth of maturity has already gone into that. So any issues that maybe edge cases or things that maybe obscure, that's all been like sorted out already, like long ago. So this idea of now utilizing this incredible data management system in a transparent blockchain, this is unique. Um, you can do this with EVM by programming it. Who's going to program it? And who's going to be able to actually, maintain that system and essentially deal with the complexities and the edge cases of what's happening underneath. So,
Hmm.
like Ethereum has upgrades, that change, I would say, specifications, and you have to maintain, with those upgrades, your own contracts so that they work the way they're supposed to work. In terms of like maybe restricting what, as an example, I mean, with Ethereum, they've gone from proof of work to stake. So they now like they want to charge you like kind of rent for the data that you're storing because previously you could put data on Ethereum and you just paid once, it was there forever, and you never have to
Mm-hmm.
worry about it. They're kind of moving away from that where you kind of have to now rent the space. So moving forward, you would have to upgrade all those systems that you were previously just very happy just dumping stuff into and forgetting about it. You'll have to now modify these systems. Think of it like a Y2K kind of situation where the underlying system changes and now you have to upgrade everything built on top of it. So I like
Mm-hmm.
the idea of a system that essentially data contracts feel to me like an L1 where there is nothing really underneath it that can change in any way. So this builds, in my eyes, a lot of confidence. Especially when I think about like enterprise adoption of evolution,
Mm-hmm.
that um, this is going to last 10, 15, 20 years without any issues. Because again, it's already lasted 10, 15, 20 years successfully without any change, without anything breaking. And that's what, again, the decision was made to take something that was already beautiful and just adopt it into the system. So like, Sam could have easily reinvented the wheel, if he wanted to, but he didn't. He took something that
Mm.
was very mature, and I would say offers a lot of confidence to people, existing users, and put it into this transparent
Yeah.
blockchain.
So if I'm able to sort of maybe package that in a similar, different way, it's kind of like the entire promise for a lot of these decentralized applications is just do the Web 2 stuff that you're already doing, but just make it so it can't be taken down. It's like decentralized kind of thing. That was
Sure,
always
sure.
sort of the promise. Whereas with Ethereum or that kind of world, let's just say, or the rest of the space, however we want to categorize that, it's basically like completely rebuilding the entire thing, whereas this is more just like do Web 2 on a decentralized net where you just take the exact same website or whatever you wanted to build and just like plug it into something that's like rock solid, sort of, instead of having to reinvent how you build a website from the ground up. Is that semi accurate?
It is, and that's the point. Is that again, you could have done this many different ways, and most, I would say most ecosystems are very happy reinventing the wheel. I think that's what gets them, their funding. That's what gives them their daily activities, supporting this new innovation that they've done. And I'm very pleased that a different route was taken here, because again, I've never seen anybody take such a basic, simplistic approach to managing something that can be so widely useful. Because again, I'm talking about any data. So think about like any database, any MySQL database, any Oracle database that you have can now be implemented in platform, and then you can plug into that database. So I would say maybe that is the direction Sam is going in, to essentially like just replace databases with this blockchain platform, and do it in a way that it essentially works for everyone. I would say there might be some exceptions, but pretty much anything to do with a MySQL database, you should be able to do with the Evolution platform,
Yeah.
but in a decentralized way, and without having to invent anything new. It's
Yeah.
already
And
mature.
so, by the way, I just for for vibe Cody kind of thing, I just plugged in that question into Grok, or what are some of the best applications and stuff that are built on top of, like, say, a MySQL or Oracle database, and just see what it comes up with, and then it's going to say basically this is what people like you should build on top of Evolution. So
Exactly.
yeah, just kind of sort of figuring this out as we go along. But yeah, so is it then, I guess, like, how big of a problem in centralized Web 2, like the stuff we're trying to get away from in Web 3, true Web 3, right? How much of how big is the database part of that problem? Is that like the lion's share of the thing that you really just want to have decentralized, which of course sounds very convenient for this conversation, but like in terms of honesty, is it just one small piece of it, and there's other things we really need, like, say, compute, for example, when we get to smart contracts? Like, how big of a problem does decentralizing the database and data access part of things solve?
I would quantify it as 80%. I think platform
Okay.
solves 80% of the problem in terms of decentralizing Web 2. Because the data is primarily what you want to be transparent. How you utilize that data, which is the compute layer, it's not, at least from what I've seen, it's not as critical as having access. Because especially, think of it this way, like when you look at the Platform Explorer, the Block Explorer, you can see, like, if I make a contact request, you can actually see the text. Like, you can just see, the name and the description and just,
Yes,
the
and I have to
language that
say,
was used.
I have not looked a lot into like smart contract stuff, because as like a non-developer, unless you count some basic CSS as being a developer, but like, I am not super advanced. I do know how to basically look at a block explorer because I use crypto transactions. But when I'm looking at the Platform Explorer, which is, I believe, platform-explorer.com, you can kind of see, in fact, I might actually bring some of that up live here, but I can understand what it's talking about. Like, it just says, from my like week of Codecademy on JavaScript before giving up or whatever, like that kind of stuff. I'm like, oh, I think I know what it's talking about here.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I get it's in plain English. There's no like, you're not dealing with like binary or any kind of encoding. Like, everything is based on this idea of JSON, and
Mm-hmm.
JSON is plain English. So what what I would say is that anyone can feel, maybe not confident, but anyone should be able to very, without much friction, be able to see what is going on and understand it, because it's in
Mm-hmm.
plain English, and it's very convenient. The Block Explorer is accessible. It's a web-based application. So if I do something, um, let's just say, something maybe practical, like if I'm doing payroll and I want to make sure that everything is accurate, I can easily go back and verify that all the JSON that should have been there is actually there. I was talking about this a little earlier, trying to verify an Ethereum contract, and it's not the same thing. When you're looking to authenticate data on an EVM, I can't even begin to tell you the complexities involved, because you have to now use I can't remember all these websites, but you basically have to dig into running queries against the contract, even to see the data, and hope that it's in plain English. Um, there's so much friction there. It's not that you can't do it or you can't learn how to do it, but the friction, it's not approachable from just an average person's perspective. And to me,
Yeah.
that's the value of the JSON aspect of the platform, is that everything is in plain English. Everything can be essentially brought up with a click. Yeah, I can send you a link to, let's say, if I, did a transaction, an NFT transaction, and I wanted you to, see, verify that it was done correctly, I could just send you the link to the Platform Explorer,
Mm-hmm.
TXID. You could pull it up and actually read the information that was presented in that transaction in plain English. Um,
Yes. Let me actually
that
throw up this example because I actually have it on the screen. Because so I just went to Platform Explorer, just found the most recent document replace, which someone just like updated a document. It was from Max Dash or
Okay.
Max Float Tank guy. He has a million different things, but
Yeah.
apparently he updated his thing. And this is completely random during the show, by the way. So uh,
Sure.
let me see. Oops, I accidentally forgot to put that in. But basically, bear with me as I do the studio mode of on OBS to get this. I forgot to make it actually look at the tabs to like bring it back up. But anyway, so here we go. This I just randomly clicked this thing. It's a document replace. There's raw transaction, a bunch of other crap that I can't read. But the data in this document replace is display name max 237 or max 327, public message on X at the float tank guy, and then /n I don't know what that is, but it says feed kids in Africa with Dash. So he literally Max updated his profile on his display name for the Dash Pay app to say to make the display name is Max 327, and he had a little like bio under there, and that's what the bio was.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I get what that says. I don't know how to do
Yeah.
any of this stuff, but I know what that is.
And all you had to do is get a link that you can click on to be able
Mm-hmm.
to access what you're looking at. You don't have to worry about running like a SQL query in a database, or making a request
Mm-hmm.
against a smart contract. Everything, I would say, that is meaningful is right in your face. And
Mm.
that's why I feel it's not going to be maybe overnight, but I can see exponential. Once people understand the you know the bar is really, for anybody to access. I think it's going to really, the rate of adoption will be explosive. I just, because nobody has anything like this. I don't think it's
Mm-hmm.
really even thought to be possible to have something like this. Because when I first, it took me a while to really understand the utility of having just the schema of these contracts, and what you could do with that. But once I kind of understood, okay, well now this lets me manage any data in a very
Mm-hmm.
structured way, in a very useful way. Because again, I'm thinking about like enterprises, that may want to adopt this. It,
Yeah.
it allows you to build like perfect databases transparently, and
Mm-hmm.
then once that's done, actually using the database, accessing the information in the database is effortless for anybody.
Yeah.
So again, it's not going to fit every use case. Obviously, there's going to be like privacy, concerns for some of the data, and some of the data might get encrypted, whatever. But when you do want something to be transparent and you want it to be easily accessible to anybody, you said,
Mm-hmm.
uncle or any person that you want to share information with and have them understand it. There is no system as simple as using data
Yeah.
contracts. There's nothing in our ecosystem that is as approachable as data contracts.
Yeah, and I think that's a pretty good like encapsulation of like the value proposition. And let me hit on some of what
Yeah.
Grok came up
But
with
but
when it
again,
said,
and I said
yes.
I want to quantify that by saying that I feel that satisfies about 80% of what the objective is in terms of the idea of like Web 2 to Web 3 with the transparency.
Mm-hmm.
It's the data is obviously very important and so is the execution, but the data is really, I think, what people care about. They don't really care so much about the execution, at least what I've seen, but they want to see the information, and they want it to be easily
Mm.
accessible. Because I just had this conversation with a smart contract that I was asked to review, and it was very hard for me to even get the data because the contract
Mm.
authors didn't put in the functions that would allow me to call the data up easily. So I kind of had to finagle the information out of the out of the smart contract to even be able to see
Interesting.
the information. And that to me is kind of where crypto fails, like the common man, is that you have to trust. You have to put so much trust into these engineers to actually tell
Mm.
you what the hell is going on and even how to see what's going on. Um, and I guess that's what we've been dealing with. But now I feel we have an alternative where we, we've we've really taken like the engineering out of it, and we've come back to just like reading a book,
It's
just opening a book
yeah.
and just looking at the information, looking at the words and comprehending the words. You don't have to know
Mm-hmm.
the science behind how the book was created or anything like that.
Yeah, it could
You
just
look it
kind of
up and
work
read
like
the
that.
words, and it's simple. And crypto has
Yeah.
never really had that. Crypto's never been simple.
Of
I would
course.
say,
I'd
at least in a
say.
useful way, in any useful way.
Well, let
So
me just
this
throw
is
this up
not.
on the screen before we get too far afield of just like the basic stuff. Why would you need a database for? So just like I asked Grok, right? What are some of the common uses for like my SQL database, whatever? It said one, content management systems such as WordPress, Joomla, Drupal, etc.
Oh yeah,
E-commerce platforms like Shopify and Magento and Etsy, Airbnb. Which, funny enough, there is an Airbnb version on platform that I believe I forget what his pseudonym was, but there was an alpha version that got just the kind of proof of concept. I have to dig that up. Social media and web applications such as Facebook, YouTube, Slack, etc. Financial banking systems, telecommunication, log management, healthcare, and other industries such as like patient records and things like that. And so
well,
we have to.
you're getting into some privacy stuff, which I would say is
Yes,
not well suited for that. Because anything
not
medical,
yet.
no, no. You can because you can encrypt it, but then the complexity comes back, and
Mm-hmm.
the value that I'm talking about, where anybody can see that, is lost. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't use platform for anything that really needs to be private. It can it can be used for that, but that's to me that's
Yeah.
not the value.
And to be fair,
There's no
like
unique value there.
there is some like there is some research into that. I know at least Paul from the core team, Paul DeLucia, is doing some
Yeah,
research into something called Grove Stark, which would hopefully do some of that
sure,
stuff.
sure, yeah.
And I
I saw that. Yeah.
know, I'm not going to say too much about, I know Quantum Explorer Sam has been thinking about ways of making some of this stuff more private in an easier way. And so, like, yeah, obviously, from my perspective, like, if people know that I updated my public profile picture and that you could, I don't, the purpose is to have it public, right? Or if they know I, I wrote a little like invoice thing and the invoice is encrypted, but like that I'm doing business, I don't think I just it seems fine for a lot of use cases. Of course, as you mentioned, stuff like medical records, that's where you get a little bit more. You want to keep like the lid on that entirely, and it might not be perfectly
Well, like I
suited
said,
for something like that.
you can use it for that, but then I don't think it has unique value. Like the unique value
Mm-hmm.
proposition for platform is not private data. That's not unique at all. And pretty much anybody can do that. But it's the idea that if you need something to be public and transparent and easily accessible to anyone, that is where I see a unique value proposition. In that anyone can understand what's going on with the data being managed by the platform, and
Mm.
nowhere else has that. Nobody else has that. Period. Like EVM can do that, but then accessing, the information requires an engineer.
Yeah.
Um, I don't. There is no other way to do that.
Yeah, so here's an interesting, like, one thing that's been in my mind for a long time, right? Is the idea, well, because of I've been Mr. trying to do crypto adoption my whole life, and one of the big pain points is where can you spend it, and therefore merchant map, and there's so many merchant maps, and they all suck.
Oh, this would be
And
beautiful with the merchant map. This
yes,
would be
and
one of the
so
best use cases.
let me explain.
OpenStreetMap.
Let me explain my idiot brain take on this, and then you can go and like make it actually smart afterwards. But so of like a merchant map, the way everyone has their own map they start, and it's always these maxis doing their own coins map that they don't have a lot of like impetus to scrub the data or whatever, and it's all like an essential database, and then they get bored and then it goes down and then there's another one, and it's a nightmare. So what if we had a single public database of merchant listings, and it would say for every single coin you wanted, and the data is just there, and anyone can then just run a website that just plugs into that and filters out some of the data and just says, look, this I only want the Bitcoin Cash merchants, that's all I want, or I only want the Dash merchants here. And then anyone could potentially edit the database publicly, kind of like an OpenStreetMaps type thing, but like better. And then just you have an actual directory of where you can spend your crypto that works. And if people get tired of maintaining something and they go away and someone comes back in, there's already a central data set where they can go say like, oh, no one's been updating the Bitcoin Cash listings. And then they go and they see all these Dash listings, and then they go, all right, well, I'm going to just start using the database. I'm going to take all these new Dash listings and just call those businesses up and see if they also take Bitcoin Cash. And if no, maybe I can pitch them to take Bitcoin Cash. And then I'm just going to edit the database, and I'm just off to the races. I don't have to start some crap from
Sure.
scratch.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's the thing is that you're talking about something that should be extremely transparent as can be.
Hmm.
There is no reason to, have any sort of private information on a merchant database. I know maybe to have the actual transaction might lean into like some privacy concerns, because one of the issues with the merchant database is the how up to date, how current is it in
Hmm.
terms of like the last transaction. um, and I don't think that's a big issue, but I know that is a concern, that you don't want your transaction necessarily being fully public. That you went and spent $500 at Ruth's Chris. You don't want that being shared. So there might be some slight privacy concerns, but in terms of like having publicly accessible data, there is a huge demand for, I would say, merchant information that can be managed, what should I say, not centrally, non-centrally. So like, to get really specific with the data contracts, and I didn't really get too much into the how they work, but once you create the contract, the data format, and you've structured it and you set up all the rules, the way you engage with the data contract is by actually inserting documents that you can take ownership of. So a merchant, an individual merchant, can actually manage their own information in that database, which is like maybe unheard of.
Mm-hmm.
And be able to determine, how accurate they want, how much information they want to share. Maybe if they want to have actual transactions also reported for the business. But the point is that it's non-centrally controlled by design, um, and that's really, I would say, how this is meant to work. It's meant to be a system that anybody can have control over their space while
Mm-hmm.
also participating in the global space. So like you would
Yeah.
have one data contract that everyone would utilize. Um, and if some, authority decided to maybe mess with that data contract, because everything is 100% transparent, it can all be migrated into a new data
Mm-hmm.
contract. Or you could update the existing data contract. But the point is that the database is what's the right word? It's forever. Eternal. So at any point, if you're unhappy with any part, let's use OpenStreetMaps as an example. If that database was in Dash platform and maybe, somebody decided that they no longer wanted to, support the crypto um,
Mm-hmm.
field, let's say, like, in terms of identifying what currencies they might take, they might maybe eliminate some fields for whatever
Mm-hmm.
reasons. You could easily then decide, as a group, that you want to have your own data contract and clone, the system entirely based on the existing data. And that can be done almost effortlessly because everything is 100% transparent. There is no guardrails in terms of reading from back from the platform. Anybody can read from day one every single document that has ever been written to the evolution system, and again, that has to be the desired, purpose of it. But that's the point: is that it's eternal.
Mm-hmm.
It's the forever database that at any point anyone has the ability and the capability of of basically, forking into something that can be anything that they can dream about. Maybe it could be a personal database. You could decide that you want, to localize it. Maybe you had a global database and it was, working very well, but now you want something more catered
Yeah.
to, like, your country or, your state, to be, more effective in, providing value to that community. So you can take the information and utilize it creatively in any way because it's always going to be available publicly to anyone.
Mm-hmm.
And again, like, other systems are capable of doing that, but the complexity. I'm just thinking, like, to do that in Ethereum. I've thought about trying to do that in Ethereum,
Mm-hmm.
and it, it could work. It definitely could work, but I don't think it would work, because of the difficulty in just even managing the information, um, in a decentralized way. It would always end up being back to, like, some central authority that everyone would have to then eventually log into, and you would have to just accept whatever they, provided to you, because it just maintaining it.
Yeah.
These systems, they technology doesn't just,
Mm-hmm.
I would say, sustain indefinitely. You have to maintain it. Even when you talk about, like, open source, if you look at a project that's maybe hasn't been updated in even a year, but let's say 2 years, it's almost not going to work. You could, clone
Mm-hmm.
it, run the guide that's supposed to, have it serve its purpose, but something externally, something outside of that code base has changed, and you haven't maintained the upgrade, so now your project, your system no longer works in in the wider system. And this is you know just the way technology works. You call it, I think the right term they use is code rot. You can't just let code sit and expect it to just
Yeah,
work
of course.
eternally. But data is different. Data can exist
Mm-hmm.
and maintain its value eternally. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and
Because you don't have to
that's why we talk about
execute it.
like
You just use it
the
and execute
execution.
on
Yeah.
top of it.
So and that's why I say 80% is really the data, because
Mm-hmm.
that's what in the end is most important. The execution is constantly going to be changing. It
Mm-hmm.
has to change, but the data never has to change ever.
Yeah. So
Um,
as far as the
and
80%, you mentioned like the 80% um, of the remaining 20% to basically migrate us completely to Valhalla, right? Um,
yeah,
how much of that is computation is in smart contracts?
that's it. It's all about execution at that point.
So that's the
How
entire
you
20% left, basically.
For me, yes, that's what I see. Yeah, it's just
Okay.
how you utilize the data. Once you have this incredible, system of information, what are you doing with it? Um, that's up to each, individual use case. But getting the information accessible to me in a way that anybody can access it with very, very low friction.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see another system that can do that as well as the Dash platform. I think
Yeah.
it's in a class all of its own in terms of the decisions that were made. I think they were very thoughtful,
Mm.
um, and I think
So
it's
Sam, by the way,
really
Quantum Explorer is watching this, and
sure,
I
sure.
got to make,
I
I
don't know who to
got
credit,
to.
but yeah,
He's been commenting in the thing. I'm sure he'll give there. It was he didn't do all of it. There was some basic specifications before it started, but I'm sure he's like, you know, I'm sure he's having a lot of fun watching this, just like looking at himself in the mirror and like flexing while he's hearing you talk about how
as he should
beautiful this
be,
stuff
as he should
is.
be. No, because
But
it's important
so
to be thoughtful
yeah,
and not just try to copy everything, because I think it's as important what he or whoever left out.
mm-hmm.
And what I would say is that they left out the complexity, which is beautiful, because now you have 80% of just, pure joy. It's the best way I can explain it. So some people try to get to like
Yeah,
95, 97%. And the more they push, just the more strain on the system to try to, you know, meet that ambition. I think it was very thoughtful to take 80%, as I've said,
mm-hmm.
and just make that perfect. And
Mm-hmm.
then the 20% we'll worry about that in another way. But let's make this 80% perfect. And I think that's what they've
Yes.
accomplished.
And so to kind of explain a little bit of like what's ahead is, it does seem so some kind of programmability, some kind of smart contracts is sort of on the roadmap for next year, maybe early 2027. Again, we're talking quantum standard time. We got to adjust for how it will, it actually takes to do. But so it should, and also as I mentioned before, there's a lot of ways they're looking at privacy to kind of fix some of the basic things. Like for example, if I added you as a contact, kind of the world sees it. They don't see what I'm paying you at all, but that there's like some that might not be super great to show, publicly. So there's that
Yeah.
that's being looked at. Smart contracts are being looked at. Can in just sort of like do you really see a lot of? Can you kind of envision, because this isn't built yet, but having smart contract capability on the evolution chain, can you see how that would work as far as like you're building data contracts in this way, and then you have a smart contract that just interacts with it for just the computation layer?
Well, I can't say 100% for sure because I'm still understanding how the platform works technically, but I will say what I think is happening. Because I've looked at some of the code, some of the Rust code, And essentially, it's important to understand that the schema, that JSON schema, that data,
Mm-hmm.
it's not very useful just standing still. So like you want to do something with it. Um, like with with the Dash Pay, you will use it to establish contacts, with other people. So specifically, what happens when you want to create a new contact with someone is you read their profile and grab their encryption key, which is part of their
Mm-hmm.
profile, and then use that encryption key to create a unique connection with that individual.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that can't be done with data contracts. Like data contracts is just it's just a rule, a set of rules, but it doesn't actually
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't do any encryption. Um,
Yeah.
so
Just sort of shows how you should
what
write the data, but doesn't do anything on itself,
it
sort
doesn't
of.
actually do it. Yeah, it doesn't actually perform the action. So what I think is happening, what I've seen, and maybe I might be mistaken, but what I've seen is that there is code directly written into Dash platform protocol to make that happen. So essentially, Dash Pay is one, DPNS is the other one that are like they're like what should I call them, like uh, house contracts, house data
Mm-hmm.
contracts, where they're unique to the platform in a way that the execution is baked directly into the code, into the node. So like Evo nodes have code to be able to do the, the, the encryption and things like that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
the alternative would be to write a smart contract with data contract to execute those things. So without the ability to write a smart contract, everything has to be written directly into the node. And I see that being very, um, what should I say, far and few between in terms of how often you're going to have house data contracts that are directly baked into the system. But that is what's happening, I think, today. Is I can create a data contract, but I can't write the execution because I don't have access to Dash platform source code, so that I can't actually create the execution for it. But what I see is being able to have a separate execution platform that builders like myself can experiment with. That is Turing complete, like Ethereum with the EVM. So
Mm-hmm.
I can do the execution and essentially build something useful with my own hands. And if
Mm-hmm.
that thing becomes central to the ecosystem, what I've created can then be written directly into the platform. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I kind of started writing this up as a kind of a sort of proposal. Like you have Dash Core, which is the L1. You have Dash
Mm-hmm.
Platform, which is we're calling the L2. You have still a gap where only, let's say, Sam can write the execution code because he's the only one that has commit access to the Rust code. I would like to see another L2 that is permissionless, that anyone could write the execution code for whatever they envision. And if that idea becomes very, very popular, very successful, then Sam can take that execution code from the permissionless system and put it into platform, which is permissioned, and then kind of just bake it into
Mm-hmm.
the protocol. So you would have essentially two L2s, one permission and one permissionless. Um, and I think that is a sensible approach, so that anyone can do whatever they want at any time. But when people, I would say, want something stable and reliable, they can then turn to the permission system that's obviously been audited by Dash Core Group and is part of the core essential services offered by platform.
Mm-hmm.
So I would like to see two L2s for Dash, permission and
Mm-hmm.
permissionless. I think that's possible. I think that's um, not really maybe been explored by the core team. So I'm looking to kind of propose that as a possible solution,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to building an
Yeah.
execution layer directly into platform. And it's not that I
Yeah.
wouldn't want to see that, is that the um, the resources to make that happen, I think would take very substantial resources that are not really necessary, because I think you can do this better separately. Again,
Mm.
just be more thoughtful with what you're going to bake into the protocol. So just
Yeah.
I'll give you an example with the idea of using encrypted messaging, which I'm kind
Mm-hmm.
of working on now. Um, I can build, an encrypted messaging system, but it wouldn't be necessarily native to platform. I'd have to
Mm-hmm.
use maybe like a third-party execution layer, and I've talked about this with
Yes.
um, the trusted execution systems that are growing in popularity right now. That
Mm-hmm.
essentially are like a black box that you create to run code. So nobody can actually modify the code, but it runs independently, transparently, anything that you program. So I would be able to see a future where individual developers can kind of take ownership of their own execution layers until they reach a certain
Mm-hmm.
point where Dash Core Group says we'd like to bake that into the protocol, and then it migrates from being like a separate um, system into platform.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think platform is actually I don't think it's really best suited for a platform to have a Turing complete execution layer native. I think I would rather see independent execution layers that are, I would say more flexible and
Mm-hmm.
less strict than what would be available, possibly even available through a native, compute layer on Dash. So I think you're going to save a
Mm-hmm.
lot of resources because you wouldn't have to build it, over the course of a year, probably. You could focus on many other things. And then I think in the end, it'll even just be more useful because then imagine you build an execution layer and then a year from now that, some new technology comes out and everybody decides that, well, I want to use this now. And think about like, zero ZK. ZK, like
Mm-hmm.
how old is ZK, zero knowledge technology? I think Zcash really pioneered it. And the good stuff is probably no more than like 5 years old.
Yeah.
So, in another 5 years, who knows where we're going to be? And I don't think it's
Mm-hmm.
necessary to try to keep up. I think you can let the technology be free and just take the good stuff, like you've already done. Just the really good stuff that people want that's independent. You can bring that native and leave everything else independent.
Yeah.
So that's
So
kind of my view, my grand view on
yeah, I
on
mean
how
that's
execution
definitely
can work.
an interesting point of view, and I will have to chat with Sam and some of the others and see kind of what they had envisioned for all that. And anyway, Quantum, by the way, he did comment. He says about the Dash Pay friend requests and all that kind of stuff. He just said, we call the system data contracts. The encryption is done on the client side, not the platform side. He says, by the way, the Dash
Exactly.
Pay contract has no execution code. So,
I'd have to find it.
yeah.
Because I've seen actually, let me just check if I can not
Yeah.
put myself in trouble here, because I have seen code. If
Yeah.
I can
And
just,
it,
I'm just gonna quickly check my tabs because I know
mm-hmm.
they're called data triggers, and in
Okay.
in the platform source code under packages under rs-dpp, there are data triggers, and there's dash pay
Mm-hmm.
data triggers, and that's a
Yeah.
lot
Maybe
of
that's,
code.
yeah, maybe
And I'm
that's
looking
the,
at the code now. And to me, without this, Dash Pay doesn't work.
Hmm. Yeah.
So
So
you can
I'm sure.
maybe focus on what I didn't verify what this actually does, but reading it, this does what I think a smart contract would do.
Hmm.
And without it, I don't see how Dash Pay can work.
And you said like
But
DPNS does. He says maybe he's thinking of that. But anyway, at this point we're getting a little bit too in the weeds of this contract stuff. Your camera
yeah,
popped
yeah,
off,
yeah.
by the
I don't
way,
get that.
so I don't
Oh
know.
gosh.
I don't know how you get back on.
Oh
But
no.
maybe just switching back into whatever into the tab would get
Oh
it back
no.
on. But people can still hear you. That's the number one important thing, and they've had like hours of your face. So if it worst case, people shall remember you. Uh, let's just sort of do a speed run through some of the rest of this stuff. So it seems pretty. We kind of did a big deep dive on what evolution is, what does it do, why does you care, etc., and how does this fit into the ecosystem, and then we hit on execution, smart contracts, and like where does this fit into the entire picture. So now let's hit on just kind of like what you're working on real quick as like a very quick high level type thing. So you the website slash name under the project in general is the Sans Bank DAO, right? And ooh,
Yeah, all right, I'm so sorry about that.
hold on,
I
let me
think I'm
kick
back.
out the wrong you. You're in here right now, but you're in here twice. So I'm gonna kick out the other
I've
guy,
been there twice.
and now you're
Now I can
good.
see myself.
Perfect.
Oh, I could see. First time I could see myself. That was cool. Okay,
Yes.
I'm so sorry about that.
So
Yeah, that's what happens when
anyway,
you start switching tabs.
so I'm putting up the Sons Bank DAO uh, website here, right? And so going through this list of projects plus ideas that you've been working on. Number one is Evo Next. So let's
Yes.
like speed running down this. Let's just give your like 1 to 2 second description of what is this Evo Next thing.
It's an attempt to decentralize. I mean, really decentralize a social network where anyone, and I've used the phrase "free and fearless" in a sense
Mm-hmm.
that you don't, because I fear a lot of censorship. I mean that's my biggest fear, is that I'm going to build something. I'm going to take my hard time, my sweat, my passion, build something, and have it censored. And that's happened to me in my history at least twice,
Yeah, of course.
where I built something very significant and I've had it censored. So the idea is that this is fearless. You don't have to worry about anybody censoring you because the clients are completely open source and the platform itself is completely open. And that gets back into the idea of the decentralized API, which is, again, another very unique feature to Dash, is that the API is part of the protocol. So accessing that data it doesn't require like third parties. It's part of the system itself. It's part of the core nature of Dash, or at least a platform, that you have an API that you can access this information. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so there's no fear of censorship in a sense. And the idea of Evo Next is just to essentially package that into something convenient that people can utilize. Essentially, what I'm doing is providing a reference implementation of how that can work. So I'm hoping
Mm.
other clients, other builders will, maybe take my code and tweak it. And I'm not inventing this. For Evo Next, I'm really following a lot of what Farcaster has been doing. I'm a big fan of that community, and they also have a decentralized system that they built from scratch. But there are a lot of centralized points to it, specifically the API.
Of
So
course.
there are elements that they can censor, and that creates concern for me, or fear even, that I may do something that I would consider, let's say, legally, is perfectly okay. I would consider morally acceptable, but perhaps, and I would say specifically, maybe perhaps one of their partners might have a problem with it. Maybe one of the app stores might have a problem with it. Apple, Google,
Mm-hmm.
where they say, well, you know what, it's not worth it to us to jeopardize our relationship, so we're going to censor you. And I would understand that as a business. But then what do I do? What is my recourse? I can't then, you know, create my own ecosystem. So the idea
Mm-hmm.
of having the the data itself accessible in a decentralized way, I think is again where the value of Dash platform is. So Evo Next is a reference implementation on how to leverage that data
Yeah.
accessibility, and to just demonstrate how it can be done with actual code.
Cool. Now let's hit on sorry, the next one you mentioned dash USD. So let me hit this -usd.org thing.
Sure.
You want to just give a quick it seems relatively self-explanatory, but would you mind just giving like the one sentence rundown of what
Absolutely.
it is?
Well, there are some, I think, important things to mention about it, because Dash USD is stablecoin, fine, but Dash USD is also the goal is to become an algorithmic stablecoin, which
Mm-hmm.
historically has been just horrendous,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of the past um, catastrophes. I can't remember the Luna. I think it was Luna something that exploded a few years back.
Mm-hmm. Terra
So,
Luna,
and
yeah.
that was, yeah, Terra Luna, yeah. So that was a stable coin that an algorithmic stable coin that reached like mass adoption and then just imploded. So algorithmic stable coins don't have a very good track record, but the idea is that they are censorship resistant in that everything is done through mathematics. So there's no authority to control. So it's definitely the I would say the most desirable model for a stable coin is something that
Mm-hmm.
is kind of self self managing. But how do you do it? So
Mm-hmm.
li- um, Liquidity, uh, Liquidity, I think it's called. I think
Mm-hmm.
the name. Liquidity protocol version one was the first, I would say, really sensible design of an algorithmic stablecoin, but it had some drawbacks in terms of the incentives weren't really ideal. They went and reworked their protocol. Version two is something that now is being adopted by many other projects because of how well the incentives align with the um, with the operation of staking and withdrawing, earning, yield. Everything has incentives that are sensible at this point. There's no faking it, I guess, and it works. So the Liquidity protocol is what I'm targeting with Dash USD. The issue is that platform can't do execution. So what I'd like to do is essentially have a like a temporary execution layer, and that's what I mentioned before, having something where you can experiment independently, and if it works then you can build it into the protocol. So the idea would be to have Dash USD have its own execution layer,
Mm-hmm.
trust minimized, and build build up its ability to function, get liquidity, and get adopted by projects, and grow adoption. And at some point, the idea would be to have all of that then integrated directly into platform. And again, this is where I'm saying, you need like Sam to write that code, but there's no reason why Dash USD can't be written directly into platform as an
Mm-hmm.
algorithmic stablecoin once you have the code. So it's essentially an experimentation stage right now to get everything working. And then once it's working, the goal would eventually be to have it native to platform. So I want
Nice.
to be very clear on that. That it's not something that is going to be perfect out of the box. It can't be. We don't have the ability to match what I
Mm-hmm.
consider the perfect algorithmic protocol today. So we kind of have to, you know, um, create helpers
Mm-hmm.
as best as we can until it matures into what we eventually want, which is a native algorithmic stablecoin for Dash. So that's where we
Yeah.
are with Dash USD.
Cool. Dash swap. I saw this one here. Really quick, what does that
Yes.
do, or what will that do, rather?
Yeah, it's a DEX. That's it. I mean, it's the same story as Dash USD. We don't have the compute layer to actually automate everything that we would want to, but we can create, trust minimized systems to handle that today. And if Dash USD grows into something that becomes, integral in the operation of, many different platform activities, it's the same exact thing. You can just take the execution code that's running in, let's say, a trusted execution environment, take the code, and then just put it into Dash, DPP. Um, you wouldn't do that initially, I would say, just resource wise, and in a sense, that's going to take like another year to really do perfectly, I would say. But for because you don't want to do things kind of half-ass in
Of
the
course.
directly into the protocol. So to do that properly, you would have testnet and go through months of like just debugging and trying to perfect everything. It would take like a year to really build dash swap into the protocol natively, but it can be done much more quickly independently. And then once it reaches a maturity level that I would say satisfies the dash core group, they can just take the code will be open source anyway.
Hmm.
Just take that code and then just bake it directly into the protocol. So dash swap should eventually just be baked in like dash pay or dpns
Hmm.
eventually. So what I'm looking to do is just get things going sooner in a
Hmm.
more independent way where we can utilize it and benefit from it much sooner than if it
Yeah.
was done in that very official, painstakingly, with audits
Hmm.
and everything just by the book. Um, is that necessary? For the early days, I don't think so, because again, you're going to grow, you're going to mature with the development of the project. So as Dash Pay, as Dash Swap, gets more utilized in different projects, it'll mature naturally. There'll be new iterations, to just improve it.
Hmm.
And then eventually, as I said, it'll reach a maturity level where Dash Core Group says, you know what, we'd like to just bake directly in.
Yeah. So let's hit really quick on the last two that don't have their own websites yet, but Dash Limo and Dash QT. Just like in a sentence, what
So
is Dash
yeah,
Limo?
Dash Limo is just really what you see in the Dash Pay app for Android, where like you can see where to spend. I actually didn't know that existed when I had that idea for Dash Limo, but that's essentially what it is. It's just a map of a merchant map of where you can spend Dash that you can visualize, conveniently. As maybe you're traveling, you can just pull it out and load it up, and it can show you what options you have in the vicinity, and you can utilize that at your convenience. But it's a merchant map for
Hmm.
convenience purposes. That I would say is very similar to the feature that you see in the Android app, where it's where to spend. I think it's
Hmm.
called. So that's
Yes.
Dash Limo.
Cool. And then you mentioned the QT's the execution layer that you're kind of
That's
building.
an It's an independent execution layer for Dash. It'll be essentially what I would like to see is it will target the master nodes or the Evo node operators in terms of
Hmm.
offering them um, some financial incentives. So basically, the fees should be shared with whoever's running those nodes. And I'd like to have it in a way that because I don't really know all the Dash economics really well yet,
Hmm.
but I'd like to have it in a way that it's competitive with what they're currently earning, whatever
Hmm.
APY, whatever they're earning right now. Create some economic model where the fees that are earned from the Dash, from the execution layer, would go directly to the master node operators, or even node operators, and again allow projects to be able to run execution independent of any
Hmm.
official um, Dash, compute layer, which again I don't see as the best use of resources because, again, I just don't think you're ever going to be able to keep up with
Yeah.
the
The
technology.
way the
I just
technology's
don't think,
going.
yeah, I just don't think, at least today, I don't see it as practical. If you were
Hmm.
Solana or Avalanche and you just had infinite resources, sure, do it,
Yeah.
but trying to be thoughtful as I keep going back to that word. I don't
Hmm.
see it as the best use of resources to try to keep up with an execution layer that is constantly changing, based
Hmm.
on just the rapid rate of progress that we have in this ecosystem.
Of
But yeah,
course.
Dash Shoot is just a compute layer. That's it. I know there was issues with the name of it. I'm not gonna I don't want to really talk about it because it's not something that I feel is that important. The name is just a name that gives it, I would say, an identity, but the name
Yeah.
is not the project. It's not at all. Um, it's a means of getting certain
Yeah.
things done sooner. Um, that's all it is.
Hmm.
That's all it is.
Perfect. Yeah, that makes sense. So I'm gonna have to run in like 3 minutes from here, but there's two other things I want to shill on the way out. And by the way, thanks for spending so much time here. This has been great, and I honestly think there's a lot that I learned that I didn't already know, and a lot of stuff that make a lot of things a lot more clear moving forward as far as value propositions. It makes my job a lot easier. So thank you very much for that. So let me
Of
quick
course.
hit on your shill o'clock. Check the clock, it's shill o'clock, but I'll do it for you. Sonsbank.org/bootstrap. There's the bootstrap
Oh
page
yeah.
where you get to crowd fund all this kind of stuff.
Well,
And
I have to jump in. I have to jump in because
yes.
I've been waiting to do this, because I appreciate the obviously the mention of the bootstrap page because it's very important to our short term
Mm-hmm.
goals. But I am going to be releasing a version of the desktop application, EvoNext Desktop, very soon, probably in the next day or two, that has the
Mm-hmm.
bootstrap built into it. And that is what I would rather people use, is the actual application, because that's where all the value is. So essentially, you can download the desktop EvoNext application from GitHub, just
Mm-hmm.
Windows, Mac, Linux, and it will show you the Bootstrap page where you can easily just um, you know do whatever you need to do from there. But the reason I want to do
Yes.
that is because for me, it's very important about the incentives of why this is even valuable, and I don't want it to be something where it's like a charity. I want it to
Mm-hmm.
be valued by the community. What I'm going to be doing, and I'll just say this very quickly, is I'm going to be restricting access to some of the features of EvoNext, specifically
Mm-hmm.
the mini apps, which I didn't really get into. But the mini apps is a feature that I really am excited about, in terms of like providing like real utility to Dash. So builders can
Mm-hmm.
come in, create a mini app, run it through EvoNext, and that'll kind of attract new users. So that feature, along with the next feature we didn't really get to touch on, but the encrypted messaging
Yes.
is another feature that is going to be built into EvoNext. So you can chat with your contacts privately. Both of those
Yeah.
features, the mini apps and the encrypted messaging, are going to be restricted. That you're not going to be able
Mm-hmm.
to access them without actually contributing to the Bootstrap campaign. So I want
Mm-hmm.
people that want those features to contribute because they want those
Mm-hmm.
features. But I don't want it to just be because I know you love Dash and everybody loves Dash and wants to support, but I want it to be incentivized. So when you install that application and you hit the screen that says Bootstrap is, we're bootstrapping and you need to do this to access, unlock the mini
Mm-hmm.
apps or unlock the encrypted messaging, that is when I want you to contribute to the Bootstrap campaign. So it's going to be
Mm-hmm.
at the time that you actually want to use these features, that I want you to make that contribution. And from there, I think that's going to be the most in line with our long-term vision of providing value,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to just another project asking for money. That's not my intention. I want it to be because you see the inherent value and want to support getting that value, to as many people as possible.
Absolutely. And so the last thing I'll mention really quick before getting off, I do have an announcement from my side. Um, announcing DashCon, Dash Conference, June 11th in Amsterdam. We're going to do. We haven't had a Dash conference since 2019. We're back, baby. It's happening.
All right. All
And
right.
a one day conference. We're doing it in partnership with Crypto Canal, who ran the ETHDAM conferences before. Their rebranding conference is called Common Sense, and will be the 2 following days of June 12th and
Nice.
13th. Same venue, packaging the whole thing. They will have a hackathon there. I am very much trying to get Dash and platform being used in the hackathon. That will be pretty amazing. And yeah,
Sure.
I hope to see everyone there. I will update the website as more stuff comes out, etc. But we'll make it a kind of formal announcement probably Monday on that. And so thanks everyone for watching. This has been a fantastic show. I got to sign off now and see you. Shomari, has been an absolute pleasure. We will chat in the
Thank you.
future.
Thank you for
And
having
everyone
me.
else.
Thank you for allowing me to
Absolutely.
share like this wonderful experience that I've had with Dash, and I look forward to the future, bigger and brighter. And I can't wait to be back to share more of that next time.
Absolutely. Cheers, guys. See you. Have a good weekend.